Hi, all right, thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Lily Williams. I'm the manager of adult programs here at the Amon Carter Museum of American Art. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our panel discussion inspired by the exhibition Límite. On behalf of the museum, I would like to especially welcome and thank our members who are here tonight. It's because of your generosity that our collection and special exhibitions are free and open to everyone. If you are not currently a member, I encourage you to join after the discussion by visiting the membership table in the atrium or by going to cartermuseum.org. As a reminder, Carter members get a free drink every month during Second Thursdays. What could be more tempting than that? I would also like to thank the Art Bridges Foundation Access for All program for their generous support of Second Thursdays at the Carter. Every second Thursday, you can connect with art through cocktails, conversations, and creativity. Each month offers something different, from performances and artist talks to tours, art making, music, and films. We hope you'll join us again next month. You can register online at cartermuseum.org or by scanning the QR code on the back of tonight's schedule. I would also like to thank the students and faculty from Tarrant County College for providing American Sign Language interpretation for tonight's talk. Thank you. Thank you. Tonight's conversation will be moderated by Scott Davis, head of the Research Library here at the Carter. Scott previously held positions at Queens College, City University of New York, and the Sotheby's Institute of Art. He's a contributor to Oxford University Press Grove Dictionary of Art, art documentation, and other publications. He holds an MA in the History of Art and Archaeology from the Institution of Fine Arts at New York University, and an MS in Library and Information Science from Long Island University. Joining Scott this evening are three outstanding photographers and artists whose work engages deeply with themes of place, identity, and visual storytelling. Celia Álvarez Muñoz is a conceptual multimedia Texas artist known for her diverse works, including artist books, photographs, installations, and public art. She is the recipient of 2 National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship Awards in Photography and New Genres, the CAA Committee on Women in the Arts Recognition Award, the Honors Award for Outstanding Achievement in the Arts from the Women's Caucus for Art, and the Outstanding Centennial Alumnus Award from the University of North Texas College of Arts and Sciences, among many others. Her work has been exhibited nationally and internationally and was included in the Whitney Museum of American Art's 1991 biennial. Her work is held in numerous public and private collections. Raul Rodriguez is a photographer, artist, curator, and educator based in Texas. Through documentary photography and portraiture, his work focuses on people and places to share stories about community, identity, and human resilience. He earned a BFA from the University of North Texas and an MFA from Texas Christian University. His work has been featured in Glass Tire, the Dallas Morning News, Ain't Bad Magazine, Art and Seek, and KERA. He is also the editor and founder of the photographic platform Deep Red Press. Bryan Schutmaat is a photographer based in Austin, Texas, whose work has been widely exhibited and published. He is the recipient of numerous honors, including a John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Fellowship, the Aperture Portfolio Prize, and an Aaron Siskind Fellowship. His prints are held in many collections, including the Baltimore Museum of Art, the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, Pier 24 Photography, and the Rijksmuseum, and the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. He is also the co-founder of the imprint Trespasser. Following the discussion this evening, we'll open things up to questions for all of you. I'll have a microphone that answers your questions so you can be heard in the recording of tonight's talk, which will be uploaded to the Carter's YouTube channel in the coming weeks. Please join me in welcoming Scott Davis, Celia Álvarez Muñoz, Raul Rodriguez, and Bryan Schutmaat.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? Yeah? Okay. Perfect. Good. So, wonderful. So I was telling the three of you by way of introduction, I want to do a little bit of an anti-introduction of showing work by none of you. But work by artists rooted in the three of your practice and also the Carter in Texas and the American West. So I'll kind of open this up with you, Bryan, a little bit here, because we have Avedons in the American West.
Yeah.
Which until recently I did not connect with your work very much because so much of it deals with landscape. All of your work deals with the land, but the land with people. And I was kind of curious for you, hearing from you and what this book kind of meant to you in these works.
I've always really loved it. I mean, obviously one of the most epic and beautiful photo projects to ever exist. But I did struggle with it at times because I'm the kind of photographer who wanders around alone in my car, and always hearing those stories about the way he produced it with like a staff and everything got me like a little jealous, I suppose. And then also, because I'm so in love with the landscape, whenever I look at these portraits, these amazing portraits, I'm always wondering what's behind on the periphery. So he was out in Wyoming and Montana and Texas in the 70s, and I love that era as depicted in photos like by Robert Adams or Stephen Shore. So I always felt a little bit like ambivalence about that, even though the portraits themselves are just undeniably brilliant. So yeah, but definitely a staggering and amazing body of work. Yeah.
And as the slideshow kind of continues, the last two in particular, Celia, these came about with some of our conversations a little bit.
This is from your archive?
Yeah, so this was a photograph by Ouija.
Ouija,
Yeah, and then the other was a posada that we have in the gallery that you chose to go along with Límite. We were talking, this is a really cute and beautiful image of Ouija.
And we'll bring him back. We'll talk about this one too later on.
Later, okay.
Okay, yeah. So this is from your archive. This is from the Carter's archive?
This one's not.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
It's from his book, Naked City.
Right. Yeah, the ones that you have another tone to it, yeah. And this one is one that he was real famous for, like introducing an opportunity to use the title, The Naked City, for that TV program that ran, And there he is. That's Ouija himself. So we'll talk about him a little bit later.
Okay.
Great.
I think and some of the connection of Three-Way here that we're seeing is the book. Three of you, it's a big part of your practice, I think. So creating prints and photographs, but also how they distribute among people and how they get to people a lot. So I'm curious to hear from each of you what led to that. And Raul, maybe I'll ask you because, as Lily said, you were the founder of Deep Red Press, and you've worked with a lot of artists through that to kind of get their work out there along with your own. So perhaps we can start with you.
Definitely. And I was going to say, the Richard Avedon book was people to me. I think it was the first book that I...
You can't hear.
And I can hear
Oh, really?
that very well.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Can't hear.
How about now? Okay.
1, 2, 3. Okay, cool.
Okay, our first technical difficulty.
It's not an artist talk unless there's technical difficulties. So, yeah.
I think I can just kind of throw my voice a little bit. Maybe it'll bounce around.
Sure.
I think that In the American West was the first book I opened up in undergrad, and it was just like mind-blowing. And then to make the connection that those photographs were commissioned by the Amon Carter was just even more kind of cherry on top, being from Fort Worth. But I learned a lot from the other book that Laura Wilson published about helping Richard Avedon and how he would mimic some of his people some of his subjects that he would photograph. yeah, I just wanted to mention that, like seeing, standing in front of a Richard Avedon was pretty amazing. But like, getting into the photo book production, to me, felt like the ultimate way to get work out there and kind of circulating about, especially as the internet is kind of getting a rise. It was like it was almost necessary to start to publish photo books of my work. And I had this idea to start a press, kind of like Trespasser, something that would allow me to reach out into the world and into the Texas landscape to see what other kind of work was being produced out there, and provide a platform for those stories to have kind of a way to be told. So yeah, I think with the use of the internet and some of our tools that started to kind of rise, I found an opportunity to create something.
Yeah.
Mine grew out of the graduate program at North Texas when I returned back to get the master's. And there was a class held by one of the printmaking professors, Judy Youngblood, that brought a lot of exposure to that form. And I liked the book form because I've always been a reader. And then in producing it gave it gave me boundaries. It was like liking mornings because I know exactly what to do. I put the coffee maker and then the next step, follows that. And in the book, well, you have a beginning, and then you have the middle, and then you wonder how the end is going to come. So, yeah, I took to it out of curiosity and also because I had been in advertising. And in advertising, when I took the class at Texas Western College way back, they didn't have professors. It was the agency directors that taught the class. So it was very direct. We were like part of the production crew as students, and we had to come up with an ad, a product, the copy, the layout, and the packaging as well. So the book form just, fell in place. I continued doing that and hopefully selling what I was what I was trying to, expose. So it was a more intimate process for me.
I relate with that intimate, not just the process, but the physical thing itself. I think some of the most resonant and meaningful experiences I've had with art and culture has been through book form, and you're alone with the book. It's like being alone in a theater with the lights off. And this is the case for photography and art books, as well as novels that I, have read, where you just tremble as these, the writers speak to you, and it's in this book form. Then, going back to my youth, I always really loved books. My mom had art books in the house. I would look at, Rembrandt paintings, and then I was 8 years old looking at Manuel Alvaro's Bravo pictures, So it was it was always a really meaningful thing. And I think when I started photography, I knew how much I loved books, and I wanted to start making my own and try to contribute to that in some small way. I think photo books are particularly important in this era because of this digital world that we're in. I feel like the internet and the sheer volume of pictures have debased the currency of images, even more so now that computers are making their own images. But every day we open up our devices and there's a deluge of pictures just coming at us. And as artists, it's difficult to reckon with that. And it feels like everything is becoming a little bit more meaningless in this age. But a book is a physical, beautiful object, and I really have faith in the photo book, and I think it can be kind of the savior of photographic meaning in this age when the digital world has diluted everything so bad. So to put together and edit and a sequence pictures that have a harmony from one to the next, the physical kind of qualities of the book, the material choices, all of these have such an impact for the small audience of people who love them. So I'm just a firm believer in the photo book and the art book and the experience you can have through them.
Also, I think maybe we're all products of our time. And during the 80s, you know, late 70s and 80s, there was like a bombardment in the art world with narrative art and mail art too, you know, where a piece was created through the mail. And I mean, big exhibitions. I first saw one in, excuse me, in New York, and it was I'll never forget, O.K. Harris Gallery. And there was a sequence of images that really attracted me in kind of a box form that I later came to know were made by Al Souza, an artist that visited and stayed a couple of years here at North Texas State University, now the University of North Texas, and that's where I did the graduate work. But yeah, there were bukus of photographers that did turn to book art. Dwayne Michaels being one of the big ones. And of course, when Abaddon came along, and I'm glad you brought the book, I think it kind of freed up the process in that he could hold shop anywhere, a makeshift, you know, studio, and yet come up with those gorgeous photographs.
I like that you brought up the time, Celia,
Yeah.
because I think for a lot of this is something that I wanted to bring up. So I'm glad you led us there. For book arts and for photo books, the 1970s and the 1980s were the boom
Right.
for all of this. So so it's wonderful to hear about how you were kind of contextualizing yourself with what was going on with that, Celia.
Sometimes it's just being at the right place at the right time, you know. Yeah.
When did you create your first book work in book form?
Oh, I think maybe it was like 1980. I think, yeah. Vernon Fisher was already there and was breaking forms that I saw keen to narrative art. Only it was, to me, it was like taking the book apart and making your book out of the space that you were exhibiting in, which went right into installation art. Not growth of it. Yeah, all that interested me tremendously, because I had been a classroom teacher, and a classroom teacher wears many hats and sometimes has to be extremely resourceful, you know, for acquiring ideas and acquiring materials and producing something and making the students more invested maybe in their locality, in their place, giving more validity, I think, to community, being part of a community.
I want to return to that idea of the installation in the community in a moment. But going back to the rise of the book form, I was kind of interested in hearing from Raul and Bryan, especially contextualizing what both of you do, and you're as artists and publishers in a history of this form now, going on 60 plus years of it.
I mean, I remember coming across, I went to UNT as well, and coming across a lot of artist books, a lot like Celia's, like really unique artist books that you can tell the artist's hand is in it. And I think with the rise of like the internet, which now is totally different from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, to me, seeing zines is where I got really excited, because then it felt accessible. You know, you could print out zines, you could print out your images on zines, staple them together, and then, you know, next thing you know, they're just in everybody's hands. And one of the first groups that really inspired me was Hamburger Eyes, which is out of Los Angeles, and just their kind of punk rock attitude towards it, and just everybody send pictures to this group, and they all get published, and then we have a big party. You know, that's where I was like, I want to do that, and I want to be just like that.
Yeah, and on the topic of community, I think that publishing offers that. You know, you see often at book events or you know, gatherings, the faces of the people that buy your books, and it's also a way for artists to support one another. You know, like whenever I sell books, I always see my friends who are buying books, and I want to keep saying like, "Oh, your money's no good here. I'll just give you a book." But then that like that list is like, "Oh, that's like thousands of dollars. Never mind." So I'll take it. It's like Jimmy Stewart at the end of "It's a Wonderful Life" or something. But I love the community, from like stuff like Hamburger Eyes to just all the love that's shared through books, and it's like feels like almost obsolete, because again, you can just get pictures anywhere on any device, but there's something so special about them. It looks better, and also you get to know people, and it's all kind of at least in my esoteric world of photo books, it's like there aren't that many people who like it, so you kind of get to know people.
Yeah.
And I think one of the questions you asked was like the difference in limited printing versus mass-produced printing, which just leads us to this institution, because Carter had an investment, you know, in the printed world. With the printed world, being sponsoring the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, right? Yeah, these circles, you know, these loops and circles that create things and give life to, like extensions of one thing. One thing leads you to something else. Yeah.
Kind of the distribution, kind of networks of information and people too.
Right, and people,
Yeah, which I think is so important. And
there's a
I brought up the Celia and I were talking because one of the things that led to this talk was an anecdote that was told me about her piece Límite, which is, and you and I spoke about this maybe last week, of you viewing that work, especially in its first installation, as pages of a book, of people entering them. Could you tell us about that story and when the piece was first shown?
Which one was that?
The Límite?
The Límite?
Yeah.
That was an installation initially, okay? But the building itself, I started responding, I think, more to the space. As with a book, you look to see how it's going to be approached, how it's going to be handled. You know, what we have the tendency to do, whether to turn the page, to lift it, to, you know, do something. And walking into a space for exhibiting, like maybe the breakdown of a book, which is like an installation, because you're telling a story with the installation as well. But you start responding to the architecture, the space itself, and I see it as the container, as the format of the book. And for that, El Límite, in that space, it was the Museum of Contemporary Art in San Diego that had a folded wall lobby. So that to me was a book standing up, just upright, just open. And and so the Límite was born there. The idea of using the architecture as a book form. Yeah.
I think that's so wonderful because you're entering it as we think of when we're looking at a book or reading a book, how we're entering into that world that's being created. And I think as you were saying earlier, Bryan, of the sequencing of it and how you're making it, but also physically. And Raul, I think you, from your experience producing these books for yourself and others, we were talking about this story a little bit ago, and you brought up a really interesting fact, and this is getting a little nerdy for everyone. So about
Inside baseball?
Yeah,
Book nerds.
a little bit. But about the construction of a book and what that center of it is, the gutter of a book. Could you maybe talk about that? I thought that was just so interesting.
Yeah. I always found that terminology so interesting that they would call that center part of a book the gutter. And you tend to stay away from the gutter because the picture, the words will get lost in there. As you kind of, especially if it's a big volume, right? Like you think about how to bind it so that people have access to the gutter. Otherwise, you have to push your images or your text kind of outward. But yeah, I think when we were talking about El Límite and that story about finding that book format in architecture, and making use of that gutter was really, really nice to hear.
And on the topic, maybe not of architecture, but of space and of landscape, the obvious thread here is the three of you are Texas-born artists, right? And then working with landscape, but also people and community, right? And we've seen a lot of that in this slide presentation so far with Celia and a lot of your family that you've shown, or Bryan with some of the subjects that you've encountered on your road trips, or Raul with some of your friends and family as well here. And I should also say I'm the outsider here because I'm not from Texas, so it's always funny for me to talk about. But I think that's a big part of all of your work. We were talking about with the book, it's intimate, but you're encountering it at home, right? You're encountering it, probably sharing it with friends and with family. So it's an intimate, solitary experience, but also a social one too. But on the topic of family and place with that and where you're finding them, I wanted to learn more from that. I think with the three of you, it's reveals itself in different ways. So I think with Celia, I think a lot with you with family and
interest in the book. Yeah, there was always books in the family, whether it was Book of the Month Club or magazines, and then growing up in the era where news wasn't as prolific as it is now, and being allowed into this outer world through these big format magazines like Life and Look, and where the outer world was brought in to you with images, very few words, but a lot of images. My dad being in World War II, we would scan, the faces during the newsreel, after or before the feature, to see if we could see Dad, we could find him, in the multitude of soldiers that are projected, up on the screen. So it's you and that image, you and your size versus this huge image of the outer world as well. And I think maybe that's what Dad brought back, being in the war and bringing back all those photographs and some books from there. As a matter of fact, number 2, my second book work is a small, like 4-inch matchbook, pink matchbook called WW2 and Double Bubble and World War II. So there's a relationship between the size and then using some propaganda images that he brought back from the war, and incorporating them in that book. So it's kind of it's a back and forth. For me, it's like a very elastic form, the book that provides you with that freedom to be intimate and yet to reach out and project more.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's interesting is, and you brought up these photographs from World War II. I think in my latest research, I was actually investigating what was happening here during World War II, and it took me to do a little bit of research on the Bracero program, which was a piece of history that I'd always kind of known about in the back of my head through various small stories.
On the what? I'm sorry.
The Bracero program.
Oh, yes, the Bracero.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I feel like that was the first time I really took to the land, kind of in a way that Bryan does, where I traveled out to El Paso to kind of witness the Western landscape and maybe put myself in the shoes of what, for those who don't know, but the Bracero program was a contract agreement between the U.S. and Mexico, where Mexican nationals, mostly men, would work the agricultural fields while American men were off fighting
the war, yeah.
So I was just really interested in how buried that piece of history is, especially for the Mexican American community. And so I don't know, I feel like that really, and that was the first time that I looked at my work and I said, this probably doesn't feel like a book.
This is yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was, this is pretty recent. I was doing my MFA at TCU, and exploring the exhibition space was kind of a big opportunity. And so I saw more of an installation, kind of like El Límite.
Right.
For that work.
How do you both feel about the differences between an exhibition and a book? Because a book is durable and complete. You can put all the images you want in it, and exhibitions kind of are wonderful because you can display prints and your installations and do all these amazing things. But the compromise between one or the other is always kind of a
The temporality,
point.
you mean?
What's
Yeah.
that?
The temporality. One
Yeah, I
lasts
mean,
and the other one doesn't.
I like books because you can revisit them year after year, decade after decade. Exhibitions come and go, and not that many people can actually go see them. Like in the American West, has 125 pictures in it or something.
Yeah.
Everyone who loves photography has seen that book. Very few people have gone to the exhibitions and seen them whenever they're up. Even, y'all just did a redo, but it was like half of the body of work, but not everyone can come to Fort Worth, and I don't know. So I feel like exhibitions are excerpts of photo projects, and the book can hold that. But your work is different because you do so many different kind of installations and things like that. But I'm curious about both of your experiences negotiating the differences between how you present work in a physical space versus a physical book.
Well, there's got to be some sort of detachment as well, There's that intimacy, but then there's that detachment, because once the exhibition is over, that's it. So, I mean, you have to be of the mindset that you love them and you leave them,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
and there's no qualms about doing that, you know. The book, yeah, you can harbor, you can hold it more lasting. There's something wonderful about the book, or Gutenberg wouldn't have invented that wonderful machine, you know,
Yes.
to print, and we're still, well, we're in an awkward time and situation because we have so much facility to create imagery now in the digital world. Another fun time too, when when narrative art came to be, it was like the outbreak of that Xerox machine, you know, that is a big camera, that's all. And it was used as a camera to the point where the maker used himself as part of the subject matter, yeah, and photographed himself in parts or whole. You know, that brought some controversy. That brought a lot of fun too. There was a lot of flexibility, and now we're having more with AI that incorporates movement as well, you know, more filmic. So, like, these forms are merging now. Yeah.
That makes me think of materiality of the two, because, and again, I'm thinking of both of your, thinking of the three of your work, whether something's going to be reproduced as a photographic print, or if it's going to be reproduced in a book, or if you're using felt to create your works, or Raul, vinyl and the other materials that you use. I'm kind of curious, how do the three of you approach that presentation of your work? Where how is it going to be made? Like, how did you choose
Preservation, you say? Preservation?
No, just for the creating of the work. Like, what made you use felt for the piece on view here?
Oh, like for the big murals.
Yeah, for the murals,
the two that are hanging out there. At that time, the digital world was coming in, and the computer, was facilitating a lot of commercial use. Mm-hmm. So if I wanted to make something large, then I had to go outside the fine art world and go more into the commercial world, whatever helps to complete the picture or tells a story, you kind of go after that. And, this area, Dallas has a lot of, advertisement companies, production companies, and one was Display Concepts. I think it went out of business 2000. But Debbie Lovell, who used to run that, was very resourceful. And I told her the size of the walls, and they were printed. They had to be printed in Australia. We didn't have the facility here in the States yet. And so, that took place. And I had no choice. They printed it on the materials they thought. So in a lot of these instances, too, in creating the work, I think, for me, the artist has to relinquish control of everything, You have to allow something else, part of the production crew, to come in and maybe take over, because they know how to do it better than you do. You come up with the idea, and for me, the idea is the driver. That's the one that dictates what it should look like.
This reminded me of your your earlier life working in advertising and
Yeah,
its
I
return.
was, before undergrad, I was a fashion illustrator for one of the dry goods companies in El Paso. And it was very small. The director, the copywriter, the artist, and did I say the engraver? The copywriter, and the director. Okay, so there was a very intimate setting, and you could look over the shoulder of each of the members there and maybe rub shoulders with him. And they allowed me to inject some copy. It was the first time in El Paso that a bilingual word was used. They described the garment as sugar and spice, and I injected que nice, which is Spanglish, and and it came out in the newspaper as such. That plus printmaking. It's small wonder I responded to Posada, because my first disciplines were advertising, and then I went into printmaking. Yeah, instead of progressing more within the commercial field, I think I saw that more of a challenge in printmaking and learning the different disciplines, as etchings and aquatints and lithographs, and that are keen to the commercial production, but deviate at the same time drastically. So, yeah, broadening like the printmaking world, the possibility of image making, and then later photography. But I was never really a photographer. I was like an artist acting like a photographer. Yeah. For the images outside, well, I had a Brownie as a kid, and then Dad brought back from Germany a Bellows camera, which was, something really new to us. And then from there, the 35 millimeter, of course, that everybody used. Then the 4x5 that I did a whole series of work. And then for this one, I did not have the camera, so like I say, I'll scrounge, I'll beg and borrow, not steal. Okay, maybe in a form I will. But I went after a photographer that had the 8x10 camera. Okay, Tracy Hicks from Dallas, and we narrowly made the deadline, and that is part of the excitement too, I think. I remember I told him, when we're under the gun, and he said yes, and I love it. So yeah, you hunt, and I think that's the big jolly in art making, the hunt, looking for things to represent, and then looking at the sources that will make those a reality.
I was going to say, I really like where this conversation is going, because I didn't know that Celia had a commercial advertising background, and I think I've dabbled in photojournalism, and Bryan does so much amazing commercial work, and I think that experience between those two worlds is such a great, I think, mesh combination. But to think about photography and thinking about all these ways that you can produce it, it does give me the thought that the reason why I use different materials as well and experiment with printing on fabric, printing on vinyl, is because photography is so unstable, and it can be viewed in so many different ways, and it's reproducible. But I think and this reminds me, even when I was exposing myself to photography on Instagram, which is how I came across Bryan's work, and just looking at just the pictures that he would take, how he would build stories through this kind of hunt. Can you talk a little bit about how you hunt?
How do you hunt?
Just days on the road, just wandering around. A lot of addiction and obsession, and just following curiosities, I would say, yeah. Just always wanting to know what's around the corner, or maybe you can kind of sense a photo, then you sniff it out and go see what's up. But yeah, it's just kind of an addiction, I'd say. And I love photography, and I love the world, and wandering around and just looking at stuff is my favorite thing on the planet. And then you get to see what they look like in pictures, and it's a very good way to spend a life.
And after this, you're on your way to Montana, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you work with a printer there, is that correct?
No, I have a guy in New Orleans who does all my prints.
Okay.
Yeah, he's saved my life many times. He's a good guy. But yeah, I do. Yeah,
So what's in Montana?
I have an apartment in Livingston,
Oh, okay.
so I'll spend some time there when I can. And I just love Montana, and I've been going there for years. And then I had an ex, and we lived in Bozeman together when she was studying. So my first book was mostly photographed in Montana. And I always try to get up there when I can.
Mm-hmm. And some of the images that we have, like the one on screen, this is from your most recent book, Sons of the Living.
Yeah.
Could you maybe tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, Sons of the Living is a book about the people and places. Basically, it's a road book, and it's set in the Southwest. And I picked up a lot of hitchhikers, and I took a lot of pictures of the desert, and there are themes of, fossil fuel consumption and the road, but it's basically just this process of wandering around, driving, and then putting together all this stuff. I'd say it's like a mix of, the way I tried to pitch it was like Cormac McCarthy meets Robert Adams, yeah.
One of the things that I found so interesting about it is, so it's landscape, but also people.
Yeah.
Right? And people in transit, usually.
Yeah.
They're, and that was, it's very different than, I think, the people and communities in transit that the two of you work with. But it's still something tied to the Southwest in a lot of ways, of people and the movement here.
Right.
Especially the border. I don't know if Raul or Celia want to talk about that.
The border. Yeah, the border. I think the border came in very handy for me. I think that if you are in a situation like that, you are given like the ability to physically and mentally trespass boundaries. Okay, you have two worlds there, side by side, and there are similarities and there are differences, vast differences. One of the big differences, I think, in El Paso for me was like the news reportage, the newspaper, the crime reportage. Mexico, you got blood and guts, you got the whole thing. I mean, and in the States, it was more reserved. So you learn to navigate mentally and then physically, because you cross that border and you enter another world. So yeah, I think that promotes in you more agility, more of a temporal agility, and a physical agility as well. And maybe the border makes for what? good hunters. Good hunters. There's certainly a lot of that going on. Yeah, and we're in the middle of a big headlines on that right now as well. So, yeah, the border.
Raul, did you have something to
Yeah.
add?
Yeah, I always have to be. This is weird because there's so many descriptions and so many, what would you call it, like identifying terms about how you experience the border and that migration, right, that movement. And I have to be, I'm always really specific about how I experienced my life growing up between the two countries. So I would spend every summer up until I was like 15 in Mexico, at the right across the border from Bronzeville. So it's not far into Mexico. It's like the region of Texas, and sort of that the way that population kind of migrates, similarly to El Paso and Ciudad Juarez. So my experience growing up was always going down to Mexico and spending time there. And not a lot of people have that experience. And so that's where you get Chicano, Mexican American, Hispanic, Latino, like these terms where, you know, we're not like monolithically similar. So I think I have experience traveling down to Bronzeville plenty of times. And I always had questions about the region and the history there, especially as things kind of intensified. And getting down there became more and more difficult, you know. And so that's kind of, you know, these things about being from Texas and being an artist in Texas and exploring the land, and trying to piece together these histories that I'm not really familiar with, but I know are there, almost feels like, you know, the similar kind of hunts for these images that can tell those stories. And the photo book is kind of the ultimate, like, presentation of that. Because I think one of the things that we know about photography is they need other photographs. And that's probably something that I heard in grad school, but photographs need other photographs, which is something so interesting, right? Because a painting can kind of stand on its own, and you can make arguments for pictures, but I think whenever I see, like, Bryan's photo books, I know that all those photographs belong together.
Yeah, it's definitely a serial medium because photography's not that hard. I mean, it's so hard, but it's just not that hard. Whereas if you see a Cézanne still life, you're like, damn, that's amazing. But if you see one good photograph, you're like, all right, what else you got? And then whenever you build an atmosphere and do something really compelling through the sequence of images and how they relate to each other and how there's harmony between the images and just really building an atmosphere that's convincing. Is why photographs need each other, I would say. But I totally agree with that statement. Yeah.
Well, Celia reminds me of kind of how we started some of this conversation with the narrative, too, right, of this. And I think with your work, there's the beginning and the middle and the end of it.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. The words just come to me. I think maybe the two languages plus the Latin, because my grandmother prayed in Latin too. So that, yeah, the language I think is very important. Is one of the avenues too. I wrote for the Tatler, which was a high school paper, you know, the social section of the newspaper. But words have always been of interest to me. And I think that in the books, it's like the parallel between the visual and the verbal from two languages. Okay, you have to decipher, you have to undo the connections yourself. And if you're a speaker, well, you might catch on, you know, but I think I work very hard at making it decipherable to both English speakers and to Spanish speakers. Yeah, you have to, you have to sell. Yeah, I'm still part of the commercial field as well, yeah. But, yeah, words have always been music, like music to my ear, yeah.
This is maybe circling back, but Raul, when you were speaking, and also this notion of languages, it seemed really important what you were saying of how we're describing. It's not a monolith. It's communities, maybe, is what we're talking about here. It's not a community. There's a plurality here that exists, and with languages, but also the different people that these works are reaching too. I think, I'm even thinking back to Bryan, what you were saying earlier, seeing the list of all of your friends that are buying the books, and probably the Venn diagram of who knows whom and who doesn't, and the communities even within that photo world, so let alone a town or two different countries, right?
Yeah.
Raul, I don't know. I was maybe.
Back.
Well, I've tried to challenge myself of not using words.
Sure.
I think the last book I reached out to a professor who had a really great poem about the similar theme that I was publishing, but I really wanted, the pictures to speak for themselves. And there's that other kind of, maybe I haven't heard it in a while, but a picture holds 1,000 words. So it's kind of, I've challenged myself with just making photographs. But I think one of the most powerful books that I think I've come across is this one book along the commercial lines called Photographs Not Taken. And it's a lot of accounts of when a photographer has held back, and instead of providing the photograph, they provide the description of the moment. And I just thought that was so powerful.
Good book, yeah.
And a master of interpretation was Posada, that could crank out an image from reading the copy that was going to be printed on the flyer that would be tacked to the post or to the penny press, those leaflets that had to be so attractive and understandable and communicative to the masses, the illiterate too. So the images had to be really powerful and speak to the people. And while trying to decide what kind of major I was going to be forming in grad school, the Amon Carter holds this big Posada exhibition with a grand catalog and all his plates, like his workshop. And in preparing for this installation and for this talk too, I thought maybe there would be witness proof of what the exhibition looked like. And there is nobody took a picture of the exhibition because it had all his plates. It had the prints that he produced. There were photographs of Posada, the maker, but there's no proof of that. The Carter does not have. They didn't document. They did not document that exhibition. Yeah, that blew me away.
Said about detachment.
Right. Yeah, so you have to. Which brings us to Ouija too, and he was so aware of the reaction from people that he would beat the cops. He would want to be the first one at the scene and not so much snap the picture of the crime, but the reaction of the audience upon seeing the crime. That's intrusive. to, yeah. And sometimes you have to do that.
Well, I think that was a great tying the knot of bringing us back to the Carter to end this. So thank all of you. And maybe we can
Any
open it up.
questions?
We have
Any
someone.
questions from the
There was
do.
going to be like Phil Donahue with the mic.
Oh, good. We don't have to pull any teeth.
I spent a few minutes in the library and saw the books that each of you had produced. And it seems to me that they become objects of their own. The photography is great, and they tie together in a story, but these objects you've produced elevate the word of book to me. Can you speak to that?
I think of the book as a work of art.
Yes.
So I think during the earlier parts of the up until recently, it seems to me like there were photographers who had bodies of work that existed, and they would do exhibitions, and the book was just a feather in the cap. It was like a documentation of, it was like a catalog. It was a portfolio in book form. And I think in more recent years, there's been this dedication to the book as like a piece in itself, where you use the materials and the design to really elevate the experience. So I don't think of my photography as art that exists in a book. I think of the book as art, if that makes sense. It does. And this is the case with books more broadly, too. It's like why I always really loved great design in books. I mean, going back to literature, narrative and language, they're intangible. I mean, these are not physical things. But even through the choice of typeface or, as a kid, I got, in high school, you get the Catcher in the Rye, and you want to read that because it's so beautiful. It's got the little rainbow in the corner. So there's something to really be said for design, the kind of tactile quality of a book, just all of these considerations that contribute to the experience you have with it that cannot be overlooked. And I think we're kind of in a golden age of photo books where people are really like taking that to the max, and I'm all for it. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, they're so beautiful. There's so much beauty in choosing the correct font,
Yeah.
the spacing between the sentences, the spacing between the title, the numberation of the pagination. Yeah, no, the cover, the jacket. There's so much art involved in making of a book, whether it's mass-produced or, and intimate, limited edition, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm really drawn to the terminology edition, like editioned at 175 or 250.
Mm-hmm.
I got really, there's a fantastic world of math to photography, and its ratios, its various ratios and things, but even the paper too, I think comes into play, comes into mind.
God, yeah.
Yeah, with paper, I always do uncoated paper on my books, much to the chagrin of production designers and printers, because I work in black and white a lot, and the tones always look better on coated paper, but I like the feel of uncoated more. So we're going uncoated, but yeah, all those things are so fun. Well, they're enormous pains in the ass, but they're also really fun to like go through those processes and make everything right.
And I think it's fitting at the Carter institution, so known for its works on paper collection too, and its multiples. Its print collection kind of fits within that lineage in a lot of ways.
Do they buy archives?
We'll talk after.
Okay.
There's a
Yeah.
Oh, hi. So I'm a middle school English teacher, and one of my favorite units that I enjoy is literature and photography or pictures, where I ask the students to pair a piece of literature with an art of their choice. Ooh. However, next year I'm receiving a student with vision impairment.
Oh, wow.
I don't want to stop her from enjoying this experience, But I'm a believer, like Raul earlier said, that I would like the teachers to speak for themselves. I want the students to draw their own conclusions. But with the student with vision impairment, how do you all suggest I accommodate her? Because as I said, the minute I start describing, like maybe a picture up here is like an old man looking up, right? Could be someone like this. And that's just completely wrong. And that detracts from the photographer's wants of said collection. So I'm asking for advice how I would help accommodate if possible.
That's a tough one, because like the form and content are such different things. You got a suggestion on this? You got the.
I was going to look to Raul because the photograph was his. So,
I mean, yeah, that is tough. I wouldn't want a student to not experience what it is to look at a photograph, but that sounds like a little bit tough. I think creative writing might be a great outlet, and maybe, what's been interesting about the internet is that, according to like ADA accessibility guidelines, images need to be provided, if it's possible, an alt text. So if the image doesn't show up, there's an alt text that accompanies a description of what that image is. And if you think about it, yeah, the picture was like this older gentleman looking upwards with a cowboy hat. But if you can find a way to make that description more like beautiful, that might be a good way, and you might work with a poet at that point, or